Hey friends, imagine this: you're scrolling through life, barely noticing the quiet neighbor next door who waves politely but never stops to chat. Then one rainy night, soaked to the bone and carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken heartbreaks, she finally opens up, and what she says hits you like lightning. You won't believe what my neighbor, the gynecologist, told me, but by the end of this story, you'll never look at the people around you the same way again. Stay with me, because this one's going to wrap around your heart and refuse to let go. Hook. Picture a sleepy suburban street in a small American town where porch lights flicker like tired eyes and everyone keeps to themselves. That's where I lived, Nathaniel Carter, 38, divorced, running a small landscaping business by day and drowning quiet regrets by night. My days blurred into one another: mow lawns, trim hedges, come home to an empty house that still smelled like the family I once had. I told myself I was fine. Most of us do, right? But then there was her, Victoria Hayes, my neighbor 2 doors down. She was the kind of woman you noticed without meaning to: mid-40s, always in scrubs, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, eyes that looked like they'd seen every kind of miracle and every kind of goodbye. She drove off before dawn and returned long after sunset, her old blue sedan groaning up the driveway like it carried the world. We'd exchange the occasional "good morning" over the fence, nothing more. Until that storm hit. The rain came down in sheets that night, the kind that turns streets into rivers and makes every window rattle like it's trying to warn you something big is coming. I was on my porch, nursing a lukewarm coffee and staring at nothing, when I saw her car pull in. Victoria stepped out, soaked through, clutching her hospital bag like a lifeline. She didn't run for the door. Instead she just stood there under the downpour, shoulders shaking, not from cold, I realized later, but from something deeper. Something broke inside me watching her. Before I knew it, I was grabbing an umbrella and jogging across the yard. "Victoria? You okay?" My voice barely cut through the thunder. She turned, and for the first time I saw her face without the polite mask, eyes red, lips trembling. She tried to smile. It didn't reach anywhere close to her heart. "Come inside," she whispered, voice hoarse from exhaustion. I don't want to be alone right now." I followed her into a house that smelled of lavender candles and sterile hospital scrubs. Her living room was simple, almost too neat, like she needed control over at least one small corner of the universe. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, rain drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. She stared at her hands, strong, steady hands that had brought hundreds of babies into the world, and then she started talking. "I deliver life every single day, Nathaniel. Tiny miracles wrapped in blankets, mothers crying happy tears, fathers who can't stop laughing. I've held more newborns than I can count. Their little fingers wrap around mine and for a moment the whole world feels right." Her voice cracked. "But every time I hand that baby back, a piece of me dies inside." I didn't know what to say. She kept going, words spilling out like they'd been locked away for years. She told me about the long shifts, the teenage girls terrified of unplanned pregnancies, the older women fighting cancer while praying they'd live long enough to see their grandkids grow. She told me about the mothers who lost babies too early and the fathers who fell apart in the hallway because they didn't know how to be strong anymore. "I'm their rock," she said. "I have to be. But rocks don't get to cry." Then she looked straight at me, eyes shining with pain I couldn't even imagine. "I can't have children, Nathaniel. Never could. A condition they found when I was 28, scar tissue from an infection that doctors missed too late. I've helped bring over 3,000 babies into this world, and I will never hold my own." The room went silent except for the rain. I felt my chest cave in. Here was this woman who spent her life easing other people's deepest fears, yet every night she came home to an empty nursery she'd painted years ago and never had the heart to repaint. She showed me a small photo on her mantel, her and a man I'd never seen, both smiling in front of a crib that would stay forever empty. "He left 5 years ago," she whispered. "Said he couldn't live with the silence of the house anymore." I don't blame him. Sometimes I can't either. That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying every polite wave, every quick, "fine, thanks" she'd given me over the years. How many times had I complained about my own petty problems while she carried oceans of grief alone? I realized then that the people we pass every day, the tired cashier, the quiet coworker, the neighbor who never complains, are often the ones fighting the hardest battles behind closed doors. The next morning I showed up on her porch with coffee and a small potted plant, nothing fancy, just something green and alive. She opened the door looking smaller than I remembered, but there was a tiny spark in her eyes that hadn't been there the night before. "You didn't have to," she said softly. "I know," I answered. "But I wanted to. And I want to listen again tonight if you'll let me." What followed were weeks of quiet conversations that slowly stitched something back together inside both of us. She told me about the nights she'd sit in the hospital parking lot after a stillbirth, crying in her car so no one would see. She told me about the little girl she once delivered who had the same name as the daughter she'd always dreamed of, Lily. Every year on that girl's birthday, Victoria sent an anonymous gift to the family because it was the only way she could celebrate the child she'd never have. The guilt, the love, the helplessness, it all poured out like a river finally finding its way to the sea. But listening wasn't enough for me anymore. One evening I showed up with a box of paints and a canvas. "You painted that nursery once," I said. "Paint something new with me tonight. Not for a baby. For you." At first she laughed through tears, calling me ridiculous. Then she picked up a brush. We painted until sunrise, bright yellow sunflowers reaching toward a sky that wasn't stormy anymore. When we finished she stepped back, hands covered in color, and whispered, "I forgot what it felt like to create something just for joy." The real turning point came on a quiet Tuesday when Victoria got called into the hospital for an emergency C-section. The mother was a young widow who had lost her husband 2 months earlier. The baby came early and fragile. Victoria worked through the night, steady and calm on the outside, but when she handed the tiny boy to his exhausted mother, something inside her shifted. She called me at 4 a.m., voice shaking. I told her she wasn't alone, she said. And for the first time, I believed it myself. That same week she started a small support group at the hospital, doctors, nurses, and patients who carried invisible pain. She invited me to sit in the back one night. I watched her stand in front of 20 people and say, "I spent years believing my story made me weak. Tonight I'm learning it makes me human." The room was full of tears and hugs and quiet applause. For the first time in years, Victoria's smile reached her eyes. As for me, I stopped hiding behind my own walls. I reached out to my ex-wife, not to rekindle anything, but to say I was sorry for the years I spent emotionally absent. I started volunteering at the local women's shelter, helping with simple things, landscaping their garden, fixing fences, so the mothers there could have one peaceful corner to breathe. Victoria and I became real friends, the kind who check on each other without needing a reason. She still delivers babies. She still comes home tired. But now she comes home to a porch light I leave on for her, and sometimes we sit together watching the sunset, two broken people who found out that sharing the weight actually makes it lighter. Friends, here's the truth this storm taught me: everyone you meet is carrying something heavy. The doctor who smiles through your appointment, the neighbor who waves but never stops, their silence isn't indifference, it's survival. The greatest gift you can ever give is simply to ask, "Are you really okay?" and then stay long enough to hear the answer. Victoria showed me that even the strongest people need someone to hold the umbrella when the rain gets too hard. And in return, she reminded me that our own scars don't disqualify us from helping others, they qualify us. So next time you see that quiet neighbor, that tired coworker, that stranger on the bus, don't just pass by. Reach out. Listen. Because you never know, you might be the storm that finally breaks open someone's sky and lets the light back in. Thank you for staying until the very end. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment with the name of someone you're going to check on today. Let's keep the kindness going. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, be gentle with each other. We're all just trying to make it home through the rain.